So I was looking in my book here for the Michigan football 2018 season. There are a number of questions in here um, that reporters have asked experts about the team. So I'm gonna read off all the questions and their answers to the questions. Multiple people answer these questions. They're all experts at this kind of thing. So let's read the first question. Now, the first question was asked by a person who wanted to know how Harbaugh looked for this year. Brian, because literally the question just says Harbaugh with a question mark. Brian said, axed Tim Drevno and brought in Ed Warner in a position coach version of the Don Brown hire. Warner's impeachable track record when not Peter principled into an OC job didn't come at UConn and Maryland, but other than that, it's about the same level of hire. Things will be fine as long as this recruiting lull doesn't last. Sapp said, he was my choice as Michigan's football coach back when Rich Rod was let go. He's doing what he needs what he's doing what needs to be done to make this program relevant and attractive to teenagers. Now that all that stuff is in place, it's time to win. Creek said, "For what it's worth, the devout Michigan fans, the devoted Michigan fans I know on both sides of the border to a person are all still on board the Harbaugh wagon. Good thing soon enough. The knee-jerk jumpers will find it difficult to squeeze back on a hair's breedeth loss at Ohio State in 2016 is all that has separated Harbaugh from entering year 4 of the honeymoon. He hasn't been perfect staff-wise, distractions-wise, but I still can't ID anyone who'd have done as well." Craig said, "I was in a minority when Jim Harbaugh was hired, since I preferred Tom Herman. Not because Herman was or is a better coach, but because I am skeptical about the sustainability of pro style offenses when most high schools are now in spread. There just aren't that many of the right pieces to go around as the Cleveland Browns discover every year. That said, I am happy with Harbaugh and optimistic about the direction of the program. And Jim Harbaugh is a lot more coherent than say Tom Allen or Jeff Brown. Low bars conceded." Ace said, "I'd feel much more concerned if Harbaugh hadn't addressed the offensive line coaching, but Ed Warner is one of the very best around. As it is, I don't see reason for panic unless the offense is a mess again this year. I suspect we'll look back on Harbaugh's first few seasons as being a few bad breaks away from what this program becomes under him. The literal inch away from a playoff appearance has had a massively outsized impact on the narrative, for instance." Adams said, "Seth Wickersham profiled Harbaugh when he was with the 49ers, and there's a bit that struck with me about how he eventually flips on everyone. No matter how close they are or how long they've been on staff, this was the offseason. It finally happened at Michigan, and I think his track record still earns him the benefit of the doubt, while we see how the pieces he added to his coaching staff fit together." Finally, Seth said, "Harbaugh, it's a less popular opinion that it was 3 years ago, but I have yet to hear a well-reasoned argument against it." Second question was asked by some reporter. He said, "Pretend he's asking any constructive criticism or first 3 years." So they're asking for any criticism for the past 3 years. Seth said, "I love that they challenged some corrupt conversations that weren't in players and interests, and I think Michigan should take that to its logical next step. The SEC is good at pushing back in favor of a status quo that the players hate, and Harbaugh is uniquely qualified to be the face of and would most benefit from reform that results in freeing the players to get paid on an Olympic model. Brian said hanging on to Drevno has been addressed, but I'm not a fan of bringing on bad recruiters as position coaches. Michigan should have done more to try to keep Tyrone Wheatley as running back and hired another Al Washington young go-getter instead of recycling Jim McElwain at wide receiver. Sapp said, "The helmet design still doesn't look right. Have your people call my people and I'll walk you through what needs to be corrected and adjusted on the design of the wings and stripes." So it's kind of just, I guess he's just messing around. Creek said, "Not yet promoting a young QB to start a season. Come hell or high water. Typically going back to the 1800s. A college team's best seasons come with a grizzled quarterback in year 2 or 3 of starting. I believed Bo in his era routinely was perfectly willing to take his lumps in what I always called a sacrificial year, in starting a young QB over a more experienced but less talented veteran. E.g. Dennis Franklin in 1972, Rick Leach in 1975, Steve Smith in 1981, Jim Harbaugh in 1984. Looks like it'll be 2021 at the earliest before we see a third-year quarterback starter in the Harbaugh era. Never would have believed that possible in 2015. Craig said, "It remains mysterious to me why Michigan can't seem to bring competent offensive tackles into the program. I am surprised that over the past 2 years, quarterback play has been so poor. With even average QB play, Michigan is at least 10-3 last year, with a win over Ohio State." Ace said the play calling has sometimes come under unfair criticism. Last year's Ohio State game plan was brilliant, but not executed. But there have also been times when the offensive brain trust, however, they've handled the mechanics of play calling, has clearly come up short. Even if many of last year's issues can be dismissed as desperate reactions to a disastrous QB OL situation, the underwhelming deployment of Jabril Peppers in 2016 and stuff like the Eddie McDoom all fade offense and red flags. Here's hoping the reshuffled staff improves. Adam said, offensive line recruiting hit snag after snag. Though that's not entirely the fault of the staff, here's looking at USEC Bagman. It also seems like most of the offense and defense have been tailored to suit available personnel with the exception of the offensive line, where what players have said about Warner makes it seem like they were asked to do way too much too often last year. Question number 3. Shea Patterson, the guy, just a guy, or the dude? Brian said, the guy evolving into the dude, late season. I think Rudock plus an impeachable ability to throw a fade and Forcier level athleticism. Sapp said, right now he's just another guy with all kinds of opportunity to be a dude. Dude status doesn't just happen. You gotta earn it. That means doing stuff to win big games on the road. After wins at Notre Dame and Michigan State, we can reevaluate dude status. Creek said, no idea. Sure seems to possess the out-of-pocket playmaking wizardry inherent in most 21st century college QB stars. Hope he has Harbaugh / Leach / Grease level chutzpah. I don't know what that means. As only Drew Henson has had higher expectations as an incoming QB in my 40 plus years of living and dying with this team. Seth says, he is the guy, but you can make most decent quarterbacks look great with a good offensive line and ruin any great quarterback if he constantly expects pressure in his face. If protection is still a problem, I hope they go to the Penn State route with RPOs and treating single coverage as an open read to get the ball out faster. Craig said, I am going full dude on this one. assuming we can protect him. Ace said it's difficult to tell because his pass protection at Ole Miss wasn't much better than what Michigan provided their QBs last year. I'm leaning Dude in part because he's skill set, pocket breaking playmaker, and potential RPO threat fits what the offense needs. Question 4. What effect does Warner have on the offensive line? When do you see it? When do we see it? Seth said, I think we will be able to pick up a stunt against Notre Dame and mash their way past the 7 opponents who aren't going to spend at least a week this year in the top 10. But unless Warner can rebuild a leg, hang 30 pounds of tissue on a teenager, or recruit an immediate answer, offensive tackle will be an issue until they've had time to develop some guys. Brian said, the utter cluelessness will fade quickly. One of the most striking things about reviewing later year play-by-play was the number of times I couldn't even begin to figure out what Michigan was trying to accomplish. I eventually settled on a bizarre situation where Michigan regularly blew their assignments pre-snap. Warner will simply simplify things immensely. I don't think he can fix the fact that Michigan is going to start 5 guards. Sapp said his impact is already happening with the mindset he brings to the group and the recruits he is attracting. He just needs to stick around for 10 years or so. Creek said, how could our O-line play collectively get any worse? Seriously, it's been the longest of all steps backward for this program this century. Remember that defensive line chewing 2000 line? Nothing remotely as good since in college football the motto often is, if you can't beat them, then hire the key assistant coach they beat you with. My hopes are high. Craig said, it is impossible for me to believe that Jim Harbaugh would retain offensive line coaches that either didn't know what they were doing or were just not up to the job. Drevno and Greg Fry have been successes in the past, developing undervalued guys at places, Indiana, Stanford, that weren't known meat grinders. Warner's track record is quite good, as he seems an excellent hire, but I just don't believe he is a savior. Ace said, coherency in the run game, which I bet we'll see right away, and a greater team offensive line IQ in general. He can only work with the players he has. However, some of the pass protection stuff, the problems extended far beyond stunts, will take longer to come along. Adam said, I think we'll see a difference from the first game. They're starting from a pretty good place. Can't really nerf stunts when they weren't getting picked up to being with. I expect there will still be issues with the questions on the edge, but I expect to see consistent growth across the front by year's end. Question number 5. What is the thing most likely to derail Michigan's season? Craig said pass protection. If Michigan can't establish a passing game, I can't see why they can't beat anyone. Seth said, yeah, it's protecting the quarterback. The 5 and 12ths of the schedule, plus the one team that will be surprisingly decent, Michigan can't meatball need to be dispatched by a sustainable passing. I don't care if you got Tom Brady back there. If there's pressure in his face, he can't operate. Brian said getting Shea Patterson murdered, and then getting Brandon Peters murdered, and then entering the Ohio State game with an old tire at QB. Sapp said, turnovers, plain and simple. It's great and necessary to have playmakers, but you can't give the ball away. Play smart, protect the ball, and good things will happen. Trust me. Creek said, continuing in-game dumbass Sparty good fortune. Another loss to them, however, fluky this time in the land of the morally unconscious. Probably would send this season spiraling and perhaps worse. This is the must-win game of the year, of the decade maybe. Need that in the back pocket before traveling to Columbus. Ace said, the schedule. It rankles me to no end that the schedule issue that gets Notre Dame, Michigan State, Ohio State, either all of at home or on the road this year. It's the later hasn't been fixed. Michigan once again gets the toughest possible Big Ten West crossover opponent in Wisconsin. 2. Though at least that game is in the Big House. Adam said anything that involves Shea Patterson being helped off the field. Question 6. Who's the defensive MVP? Seth said Devin Bush Jr., even though Gary is the better player because middle linebacking is hard. Offenses have to sacrifice backfield material to account for the likelihood of blitzing Doom Squirrel. And even when someone breaks big there, is speed in the middle of the field to run it down. Brian said Lavert Hill and David Long, to a slightly lesser extent, do not get sufficient credit for how good they are, and how their ability allows Don Brown to unleash hell on the quarterbacks. Hill is already capital E elite and will probably spend time shorting up the one clear weakness of last year's D, defending slots. Sapp said, Devin Bush Jr., in my opinion. The best player on defense needs to be your linebacker. He's the quarterback of that unit, and he runs the show for that side of the ball. He has all kinds of talent and athleticism. He just needs to be the dude on D every game. Creek said, hopefully Gary, or better yet, an interior D lineman. Talent oozes in the back 7. For someone to be Hurst Glasgow level dominant inside means everyone would play more effectively. Craig said, has to be Rashawn Gary, though this is a defense with numerous all Big Ten players. Chase Winovich, Lavert Hill, Devin Bush, Khaleke Hudson are potential All-Americans. David Long isn't far behind. The defense is loaded with potential MVPs. Ace said, I'll join the chorus voting for the former number 1 overall player in the country. Those are tough to bet against. And he's talking about Rashawn Gary. Adam said Rashawn Gary is going to make life hell for every single O lineman he encounters, which will make life noticeably better for the other 10 guys on the side of the ball. Has to be him. Number 7. Question 7. How worrisome is recruiting? Brian says the finish to the 2018 class was a 5-alarm fire, flat out. Not only was Michigan not picking up touted recruits, they weren't even in on any. They've recovered fairly well with some new go-getters, but 2019 is not on the level of the first 2 Harbaugh classes. It's a concern. Excuse me. Sapp said, not worried anymore. It's the lifeblood of the program, but the talent and the depth is finally there. When underclassmen start supplanting upperclassmen on the depth chart, you've done your job as a recruiter. Creek said, the Ohio horses left our recruiting barn shortly after the turn of the century. For whatever reason, unsavory or not, our inability to steal sparkling recruits from Ohio at all in the Tressel years, and few and far between since, has played a large role in our decline this century. So am I worried? Sure. Can anything be done about it? Probably not. Harbaugh is doing about as much as can he done in that state. Outside Ohio, given our decade in the CFB wilderness, Harbaugh similarly is doing as well as he can be expected. Overall, if not better, today's 10th graders, alas, have no recollections of watching Michigan play in an important January game. Craig said, I am not a stargazer, so I ain't really worried. The fact that 5-star guys outperform 3-star guys in a macro world means little where there aren't that many 5 stars. Evaluation, not reading through lists, remains uber L's. Seth said, it is worrisome because it demonstrates a little bad luck on a tough schedule this year. Could shake confidence in the program. Certain positions are more about development and but the data suggests that you can't fake talent at quarterback, receiver, and defensive end, and you can't get that kind of talent to turn down the kind of money the SEC is throwing around these days, unless they think they're going to win a championship with that degree. Ace said, Michigan is, at press time, coming off a 6-commit week. Recruiting is fine. While last year's class was a little underwhelming, the 2019 class is coming together very nicely. And not just at the top. I think this staff is identifying and landing a lot of prospects, though whose film and often offers outstrips their rankings. Adam said, I think this largely comes down to how you feel about player development, which bothers a number of people still feeling burned by the Derek Green experience. I agree with Seth's point about SEC money, making it unduly difficult to get guys to commit, but recruiting hasn't fallen off the point. I'm concerned that the staff has voluntarily taken some lower-ranked guys, but they did that with Higdon, and it worked out just fine. Question 8, breakout player on offense. Seth said Zach Gentry. His blocking last year progressed to Jake Butt level, which is more than sufficient to get this walking mismatch on the field as often as they can. Despite being a senior in age, Gentry was basically a redshirt freshman last year after moving from quarterback. So this is the season he becomes fully weaponized before the NFL calls. Brian says Gentry averaged 12 yards a target last year in that passing offense, and he's still exploring considerable upside after his move from QB. Sapp said Tariq Black. I just feel that the year off will start him into having a great season this year. I envision one big play from him each game. He's going to be that kind of guy this year. Creek said, hoping it's an offensive tackle, that or the other offensive tackle. Craig says, I chose Tariq Black last year, and I think he may become our best wide receiver, but I am picking DPJ. I think he will put it together this fall. His athletic ability is stunning. And DPJ means Donovan Peoples-Jones, if you don't know. Ace says Donovan Peoples-Jones is an athletic marvel who we knew heading in was going to need a year to refine his route running. He was a depressing number of bad deep balls away from putting up so much more impressive numbers as a freshman. He's going to get open. Michigan now has a quarterback that... Hold on, I have to turn the next page. That should be able to hit him. And he's electric with the ball in his hands. Freshman receivers suck. Sophomore receivers break out. Adam says Cesar Ruiz has reportedly had a great offseason in the weight room, and I expect he'll be moving guys off the ball with regularity. Number 9, question 9. Breakout player on defense. Brian says Mike Dwumfor. When Jim Harbaugh sits back down at a podcast, he already left just so he can talk about Dwumfor. I believe the hype. Mo Hurst, big. Lockett. Sapp said, breakout to me means someone who hasn't lit it up thus far in his career. Ambry Thomas. He will get plenty of opportunity to show that he can consistently make plays in the defensive secondary and be worthy of wearing the number 1 jersey. Craig said the right answer is probably whoever wins McCray's spot or assumes Mo Hurst's snaps. So Josh Ross or Dwumfor Aubrey Solomon. But even with Michigan's spectacular corners, I am going with Aubrey Thomas. He will get some snaps and play near the level of Hill and Long. Seth said, that chorus you hear is Schembechler Hall trying to answer Dwumfor. But I agree with Sapp and Craig. Michigan has 2 corners who could go high in the draft with the repeat performance of last year, and Thomas could carve out an equal share of snaps from them. Ace said, in all the Mike Dwumfor hype, we've lost sight of the fact that Aubrey Solomon is a former 5-star prospect with unbelievably good high school film, who's heading into his second year after flashing promise as a freshman. Adam said Aubrey Solomon had emerged as a Michigan starting NT, but the end of the season, so it's not a stretch to think he'll be a star in 2018. A little pass rush development will go a long way. It's also not a lofty ask, as Solomon showed flashes of what he could do when single blocked. Creek said, sounds about right. Ambry or Aubrey, flip a coin. There are so many returning breakout players from last year. Few qualify for this. Question number 10. Area of the team that shouldn't make you nervous but does. Only 2 guys answered this one. Seth said the guards. There were a lot of pass protection problems last year that were not on the tackles, and it's going to make some time for Onwenu and Breedson to get from where they were in the Outback Bowl to hacking it. Brian said, punting. The regression last year was enormous, going from Kenny Allen consistent boomers to a series of ugly ducks and shanks. Probably cost Michigan 300 yards of field positions. No cavalry coming. Michigan still spooked into running pro-style punting, so coverage is iffy. Question number 11. Again, only 2 people answered. It's weird. Number 11. Area of the team that should make you nervous but doesn't. Seth said it's defensive tackle. On the surface, you're replacing Mo Hurst, a would-be top 5 pick based on his college production, with the carrot buddy of Rashawn Gary sight unseen. Backed up by a former rush end, we are trusting 2 seasons of program hype. Greg Matson's Hangier, certainly principal, and Penn State offered to him for. Once committed to. I'm not worried, but I'd like to have seen it. Brian said safety. Too much derision heaped on the starters. They're just become because of some acrobatic catches on their face. And Tyree Kinnell did miss too many tackles last year. Still very good at preventing big plays. Question number 12. Make a specifically ludicrous prediction about the upcoming season. Excuse me. Brian said Michigan beats Ohio State. Sapp said Joe Milton becomes the two-way threat, making plays at the linebacker position and is a red zone QB. Craig says, I consider most any prediction I make to be ludicrous, but I am a huge Grant Newsome fan. I predict he returns by game 3 and is solid at left tackle. Seth said, while Shea Patterson is attempting to slide after a scramble, Michigan State's linebacker John Reiskel pulls out a long knife and attempts to gut the Michigan quarterback. Patterson is just able to avoid a fatal blow, raking the stab in his upper thigh, but in doing so, this head collides with Redsnick's after a 25-minute review. The officials declare it wasn't targeting because Patterson didn't mean to lead with his helmet. Rishka, whatever his name is, pleads his attempted murder charge down to dueling on public property. A $100 fine, and the Michigan State Board of Trustees concludes Reshke has their full support. The ludicrous part is D'Antonio actually suspends him for a whole practice. Adam says Michigan has the ball with 47 seconds left to go and 3-point lead against Michigan State. Facing 3rd and 12 from their own 34-yard line, Michigan converts as Patterson hits Black on a drag screen, thus enabling them to run out the clock. Question 13. I think this is the last one. It is. It's the very last question. Number 13. Overall record versus rivals, and both fate. Seth said 9-3 with a win at Michigan State, a loss to one Wisconsin or Penn State, one to the field, and one at Ohio State, as per Michigan tradition. Shea does some Heisman stuff against Notre Dame, but is injured by Ohio State. Brian says 10-2. Hammer Notre Dame, hammer Michigan State, lose to Ohio State on controversial spot. Non-playoff win and go to a non-playoff bowl. Sap says 12-2, beat Notre Dame, Michigan State, and lose to Ohio State on a bogus last-minute pass interference call in the end zone. Still get to Indy and beat Nebraska. Lose to Bama in the playoff semifinal. I don't know why he says Nebraska. Nebraska isn't going to do anything this year. Creek said, perhaps the 3 greatest Michigan seasons in my 4+ decades of fanhood, 1980, 1985, 1997, all came when the Wolverines were loaded with talent, but for whatever dumb-sounding reasons, in retrospect, were predicted to finish behind 2 and 4 other Big Ten teams, including Ohio State in for a dime, in for a dollar. 14-0. He thinks we're going to go undefeated. Craig says 11-1. We stumble someplace. We beat Ohio State. Ace said a 9-3 record while going 1-2 against rivals. The team is better than the record indicates, but the every rival on the road factor and offensive tackle issue prevent them from being elite for another year. Fans lose patience before they should, and the team takes out their frustration with a blowout Citrus Bowl victory. Adam says 11-2 with a loss at Ohio State and in the bowl game. That is it. So that's the video for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys want me to make a video on next. I have something planned for tomorrow. I'm not sure if I actually will do it tomorrow, but I will either tomorrow or the next day. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. For whatever reason, I cannot stop this recording. Hold on. Okay, see you later.